Dear audience, I know it is hard to follow the presentations after lunch, but I believe coffee would help to follow. Okay, finally we are at the last session, and as being the moderator of the session, I can directly invite my colleagues to make their presentation. Two of the presentation will be from our university, and one from İstanbul Üniversitesi, Professor Serra Görpe. And we will start with Yeşim, Assistant Professor, hopefully Associate will be. Assistant Professor Yeşim Kaptan, with his co-author Burcu Öksüz. She's going to present his paper.
As you see, my students love me so much, and I love them back. And I would like to welcome all of you, all of my colleagues and my students to this presentation in this lovely day, in this sunny day, for being with us here. My presentation, which I am working with Burcu Öksüz, one of our research assistants, is actually is a work in progress. That's why I really appreciate any feedback, any comments, any questions coming from you. The presentation is the articulation of locality in advertising adaptations, the case of Snickers advertisements. Actually, when we look at the relationship between media and nationalism, we see that this is a well-researched topic. Especially Benedict Anderson, in his monumental work, Imagined Communities, talked about how print capitalism needed media in order to construct a nation state and national identities. And actually, capitalism and nationalism cannot exist without the print capitalism, which means they cannot exist without media. And Michael Bullock similarly says that in order to understand how we construct nations and national identities, we have to look at the banal nationalism, the everyday representations of nationalism in media, and then that's how we understand the society and what kind of identities we are constructing today. Also, many media scholars, anthropologists worked on the significant role of media, especially the role of television in the construction of national identities. And Mankakar, Purnima Mankakar did a field work in India with audiences, television audiences, and similarly Lila Abulugot did a similar research in Egypt. Askew and Wilk worked in Belize, and then they, searched for the construction of national identity in such a diverse island, and the role of television there. And Waysport is working on Latin America for researching the similar topic. And recently, both media studies and anthropologists, ethnographers, focus on the role of advertising, which is a very neglected topic in media studies, and how advertisements create a sense of unity, and how advertising practitioners play a very, very active role in this creation of national identities, and then creating a sense of unity among, diverse groups in a nation. Davila did a research in Latin American group among Hispanics, and Foster went to New Zealand and then worked, how Coca-Cola and Pepsi commercials really worked well for the construction of Papua New Guinean identity also. Mazzarella made a fieldwork research in Indian advertising companies, and Kemper was working in Sri Lanka and searching for the same topic, and Shanti Kumar focused on how advertisements specifically, not the advertising practitioners, but advertisements helped, modernization and becoming a nation of India. However, when we are looking at the literature, we realize that format adaptations did not study it very well, which means that we found a couple of articles from marketing, written by marketing scholars from marketing perspective, but communication scholars, marketing communication scholars will not focus on or have not been focused on this subject yet. And that's why we chose format adaptations as a part of identity construction process. When we have to give a very brief definition of format adaptations, we can say that these are localized versions of original programs, and these are media forms that commercially tailored to serve a national audience. And why we focused on Snickers commercials specifically, very much so personal reasons, because when I was teaching in the United States, I realized that the Super Bowl commercial of Snickers in 2010 became the most popular commercial among students. And they loved it so much. They are very passionate about it. And when I came back to Turkey, I realized that Snickers is also a very, very popular commercial in Turkish youth, in Turkish, among Turkish students. That's why we, chose Snickers commercials because I really, okay. Now, sorry, Allah interrupted me. Okay, now we will watch 2 commercials, and then we will talk about them and the format adaptations and its role in the national identity construction.
Mike, what's your deal? Come on, man. You've been riding me all day. It's not like Betty White out there. It's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby! Eat a Snickers. Better?
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
Now, when we focused on the adaptations, we realized that the variations appeared mostly in the content of the story, the storyline and characters, and variations offered by the commercials are also proposed as instrumentality of localization. Okay, yes. Here is, actually this is one of the pictures from a previous commercial, from a previous campaign. However, since I liked it so much, I put it there. But we mostly focus on You Are Not You When You're Hungry campaign of Snickers, and as I mentioned, the format style of each adaptation differs from country to country, and then these commercials are very popular from Russia to Bangladesh. And however, in each adaptation, the big idea, the slogan, basic structures, and the basic structure of the commercial mostly stays the same and remains the same. And we claim that variations offered by the commercials are also proposed as instruments of localization. We already see that. And we use diverse methodologies. However, these 5 major themes appeared again and again and came to surface during our research, and that's why, as the localization strategies, we picked those 5 themes. However, in this presentation, due to time limitations, I focused on only one of it, and then maybe we can talk about the others during Q&A. And I chose language and culture because actually, one of the first markers of Turkishness, according to the focus group, by the way, did we miss the methodology? Okay, we mixed up the slides probably, but I'll give you a very brief information about the methodology. We used the focus group interviews, and we also conducted a semi-structured interview with the BBDO's, not the account executive, strategic manager, Haluk Sicimoğlu, and we made the textual analysis of the advertisements. Today, I'll skip textual analysis and the semi-structure interview, but I'll mostly focus on the focus group interviews in this presentation. And language, as I said, plays a critical and significant role in the process of localization of adaptations. And in our focus group, a male student says passionately, in the commercial, they are talking to us as we understand it, and speaking Turkish to Turks is much more effective. When they compare these two commercials, the American and Turkish version, they specifically stated that language plays a really, really key role here. And also, languages are essential constituent element in the process of national identity formation, as Anderson, Smith, Billig, and Hall and Duguay stated rightly. According to Sylvia Weisbord, the language remains a pillar of cultural distinctiveness and national identities in a globalized world. And in addition to language, focus group participants ensured that the language is an inseparable form of culture. That's why we are analyzing language, we realize that we have to look at the how culture is engaged in the language, and then we mostly come to this point that almost each participant stated that there is an interconnection between language and culture. That's why you cannot think one or the other separately. And a male sophomore student, for instance, says when our moderator Burak Amirak, he is here with us today, asked them, if a foreign student watched these commercials, a Turkish version of it, do you think they understand it even if they don't know the language? And then the answer was, I think it is not important whether he or she knows Turkish or not. The most important thing is to know culture, to know history, and to know the Turkish concept of diva. And diva is a very, very popular concept among, young students, that they use this phrase. And most of these languages, for instance, shaggy okra, or talk to the microphone, or being a diva, slipped into the everyday language of these young people. And another female student actually reinforced his comment by saying that what is important there is the content of what young man said in the commercial. What the actor says when his friend becomes a woman, and they call it diva, and that's the cultural component of it. And another male student just emphasizes and underlines again and again, just speaking language is not important. Means you don't know the culture, you don't understand the commercial, you don't know conceptualization of diva in Turkish culture, and that's why it's not funny in that sense. All these, comments leads us to the conclusion that actually students are taking a very essentialist approach to the culture, and that's why they think that, rather than being learned or being taught, the culture is very intrinsic, and then that's really essential to the identity construction, and that's why a foreign student cannot understand easily or cannot find it even funny, and then don't laugh with them to these commercials. Then we came to the point of construction of cultural identity, which is a very intrinsic part of national identity. Because many students underline this point. However, one male student says, we grew up in this culture, and that's how we know or understand it. And here, he actually emphasizes that the primary source of national identity is the cultural identity, inherited in the habitus of national culture and acquired through socialization. And as Anthony Smith argues, national identity is composed of cultural identity and located in a cultural community as well as a political one. In this sense, nations' concern is to create a collective cultural identities by normalizing the ties between culture as hereditary and shared common characteristics of community and nations. Similarly, cultural identity leads us to the differences between American culture and Turkish culture specifically, because all students again and again mentioned that American version and Turkish adaptation reflects the cultural distinctions between these two societies, and that's why they define, you know, these two cultures as opposed to each other almost. According to them, Turkish culture is identified with the cultural attributes such as solidarity, friendship, closeness, familiarity, proximity, communality, hierarchy, and gimmickry or ostentation. I don't know the translation is quite right, but shatafat came to the surface again and again. On the other hand, American culture was defined as individualistic, supportive, distanced, plain, and competitive, ambitious, egalitarian. And similarly, Kellyott and Mueller evaluated messages in American beer advertisements based on three predominantly American values, two of which came up in the focus group interviews. These are individualism, related to independence, and newness, modernity, and achievement, which we associated with ambitious and competitiveness. And in the, okay, I'll 2 more minutes and then I'll skip quickly. I'll skip this part, the cultural proximity. However, I will say that they find Turkish version very, very successful because they culturally feels proximate to this commercial. And in conclusion, in the adapted version of Snickers commercial, the characteristics of Turkish nationalism were articulated by main tenets. As I said before, these are the 5 main tenets, like national language, the culture in terms of humor, Turkish popular culture, domestic gender roles. By comparing the 2 different versions and by indicating the modifications introduced in the Turkish remake of the commercial, we argue that in Snickers advertisements, format adaptations work through localization strategies and proximity. However, in format adaptations, locality is constructed as national and plays a significant role in the formations of national identities by reinscribing main tenets of Turkish nationalism. And although the questions in the focus group interviews were framed around the Snickers brand and its commercials, the cultural component, especially national culture, was a constant dynamic in participants' response. Evidently, the participants' stance was taking advertisements as representative texts of particular nationalities. Participants' responses suggested that Turkish national identity is revealed by localization strategies of the commercial, and commercial representations are widely accepted as constituent elements of a national identity by reinscribing participants' nationality. Yet, in the focus groups interviews, national identity is revealed as a cultural process that is naturally acquired and learned by living and experiencing a specific culture. Thank you very much for listening.
One question from your club. And
are you thinking to develop the research and analyze some other advertisements as well, like Snickers advertisements, and draw a conclusion from the whole advertisements?
I think it should be done because, as I said, I mean, format adaptations and advertising is really not my research. Although we have a really abundant literature on nationalism and, you know, media, nationalism and television, etc. But first, I honestly feel that we have to develop this paper more. And then by looking at all these 5 items in detail and by making a very, you know, deep analysis, maybe if we just, you know, finish this paper, then we can go on to other research like that. But yeah, it should be done. I agree with you.
You said at some point during your presentation that language is inseparable from culture. Huh? And that may well be true when, for example, an advertisement is presented in Turkey in Turkish and using cultural Turkish cultural criteria, What happens when the same language is used but the culture is different? For example, there are many advertisements taken directly from American television and shown, for example, in the UK and Australia, and the culture is very, very different. The language is the same, apart from the accents, but the actual interpretation of what is being used culturally is different. No? And the same is true, for example, in America and Canada. If you look at the diffusion rate of particular products like, for example, electric kettles, in Canada it's like 98%, in America it's 2%. Yeah? And what's the difference? It's to do with culture, not to do with language. So I think you have to be able to separate language and culture. At some points they run together, but at some points they may. It's easy for international advertisers to make mistakes with culture. Huh?
That's a really actually good point, and there are a couple of articles about that point, because I know that especially marketing scholars, not the media scholars, made research on how the same advertisements with the same language, showed in both countries, speaking the same language. However, the impact and effect of these advertisements were different. And then the success of these advertisements were different in different societies. However, since these are, all these research come from marketing scholars specifically, they are not looking at the cultural impacts of it in detail, which means that they are mostly focusing on, what companies should do and how they would do it, etc., or the impact factor, or the success of the campaign, or effectiveness of the campaign, but not, as I said, the cultural implications. But I totally agree with you, and marketing, professors are already making research about it. On the other hand, there are, a couple of articles doing the same thing. For instance, what happened when they showed the same commercial in Spain and in Latin America. They also have dramatically different results. Even if they speak Spanish, the cultures are totally different and the results are totally different. But as I said, they are not taking a, media studies or cultural studies perspective when they are doing that. And there is less research on this side because advertising is already a remote field in media studies.
One way into this problem might be semiotics. Would be very useful in this course.
Yes, and in our textual analysis, we are doing semiotic analysis. But I skipped that part and then focus on, focus groups.
Okay, no more questions? Then I would like to invite Professor Serra Görpe for her presentation.
Thank you, Ebroja. And first of all, I would like to say that it's my pleasure to be with you and to be one of the speakers in this very valuable conference. And I also would like to say thank you to the students, because today is Friday afternoon, and still they are with us. I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm from Istanbul University, and we can hardly encounter students of that type from time to time. Thank you. We are, I think, Burak Hoca and myself, we are among the last speakers of today, and I prepared my presentation, and after hearing the speeches of today, I realized that some of the things would be coming in my presentation and in my slides. I have a long title, but very briefly, one of the objectives, one of the outcomes of my presentation is to share with you where is public relations in marketing communications and integrated communications. It is a thought paper, and moreover, some of the comments that I'm going to make are very much related to, are coming from the current ongoing research papers that I'm collaborating with my colleagues. And also, I would like to add that in addition to the academic research, I used to have another hat, and that hat was I was a public relations practitioner, and very happy to tell you that I was working, actually I helped the foundation of Turkey's first marketing public relations agency, which is called NPR, in year 1994. So for this specific presentation, I also had the opportunity to interview the founder of Marketing Public Relations Agency, who was my general manager, Meral Saçkan, and also I will be sharing with you her thoughts about integrated communication, marketing, PR, with respect to what is happening in Turkey. In my presentation outline, I have a couple of slides, and those slides I'm going to pass very quickly, because those slides are showing us two things. One is innovations in technologies, and secondly, the impact of social media. Maybe not the impact, but the usage of social media. Because I want to say two things, like this is one of the slides. I just pulled out what was important for us, like 1956 videotape, 1920 continuing radio broadcasts. Another slide on telefax, Walkman, CNN, 1991 World Wide Web, 2004 Facebook, 2005 YouTube, 2006 Twitter. So these innovations, these technological innovations dictated our areas of research in communication history. And this digital revolution affected our roles as communication specialists, educators, and in a way refined what we are aiming for. I'm sure for those of you who are very much from the public relations field would agree with me that from time to time there are some very trendy topics. For example, once upon a time, and still to a certain extent, so by the academic community, CSR, but I'm sure you would all agree with me that the agenda, the research agenda of academics is social media. So we're trying to find how social media is affecting public relations and communications. And I do have two slides with respect to the European digital landscape. This is called ComScore 2003, Europe Digital Future in Focus Report 2013. So some key highlights of this very comparative study. In December 2000 results, as you can see, a lot of people is online, and when compared with the previous results, we can say that there is 7% increase. And when we look at Turkey, the biggest proportion of young internet users are from Turkey, the age from 15 to 34. And if I'm not wrong, the oldest is coming from Germany. The second information that I would like to give you is on European Communication Monitor. I don't know if you are following or you are aware of this ongoing research, which has been initiated by EUPRERA, European Public Relations Education and Research Association. This is actually a study which includes 42 countries. It is a comprehensive study on challenges and competencies for strategic communication. And out of this comprehensive report, what I did was I pulled what was the challenging thing for the PR and communication scholars within Europe. Number one is coping with digital evolution and social web. The second one, the challenge of linking business strategy and communication effectively. And the third dimension that come up, which is new in the 2012 study, is the need to address more audiences and channels with limited sources for communication. Another finding, which I thought I should share with you, is there's a large gap between the perceived importance of social media tools for communication and the actual rate of implementation in European organizations. and online communities or social networks, the most important social media tool available. I want you, maybe when we have the Q&A session, we can elaborate more on these results, like what is social media doing to us and with us as well. But in this second part of my presentation, I would like to very briefly talk about PR development in Turkey. Maybe this could be a repetitive thing for communication faculty students, but it is very important to come to a position with respect to PR, integrated communication, if you do not know how it had developed in your country. So for Turkey, we can say that as it had been in almost every situation, it was the government who triggered public relations. So it first started in state organizations. Then with the entrance of the multinational companies into Turkey, we kind of discovered what is actually done in public relations. But usually the press agentry, the publicity model has been used. I'm dividing the public relations into two parts, two basic periods. One period is before its formal education has started, and the second one is after the education period. And of course, we should not forget the role of the public relations associations in making an occupation, which is PR, in bringing to a profession. For this presentation, of course, there are certain literature which triggers your thought or it gives you a guidance. And for this one, the paper from Italy, our colleague from Italy, Valentini, has wrote a paper on institution of Italian public relations. The second one, which is a criticism of public relations. And the group of books that you see, whom we here say the father of marketing public relations, Thomas Harris, those books were guided, these books guided the marketing PR practices of Turkey. As I told you, my remarks about where is PR in integrated marketing communication, etc., is based on these finished and ongoing 3 studies. One of them is we're looking at the 3 sectors, the automotive, pharmaceutical, and banking corporations in Turkey. These are the ones that are the most admired companies of Turkey. And we are trying to find out what makes them admirable companies and whether there is a difference of reaching admiration or reputation among different sectors, such as pharmaceutical and banking. The second one, the International History of Public Relations Conference paper, and also this is a research project. It helped us to come up how public relations evolves throughout the years and where is it in integrated communication. And finally, another paper which is on integrated communication activities of an NGO, a Women Entrepreneurs Association of Turkey. As I told you, basically, I'm going to talk about Meral Saçkan, who founded NPR in 1994. And by of 2014, it will be 20th anniversary. So I addressed her a couple of questions, public relations, what it means, the birth of NPR from Turkey's perspective, public relations contribution to marketing, challenges and opportunities in NPR, integrated communication, what it means, structure of communication function in organizations, the role of PR person in the postmodern era, and also she shared with me some integrated communication campaigns, which I will highlight maybe some of them at the end of my presentation. She said that Public relations has sort of two branches. One is the management function, and in that management function, you are dealing with stakeholders. It is called corporate communication, and the goal is mostly reputation. And in public relations, it also has an added value to marketing communication. Based on her experience with her clients of 20 years especially, she claimed that the credibility aspect of public relation is what it works. And especially marketing public relations is a profit generator for organizations. So in that respect, as we all know, we are not only targeting consumers, but all the stakeholder groups as well. How the idea of marketing PR come? Actually, even before she claimed that she is positioning her agency as a marketing public relations agency, there had been other public relations agencies and communication agencies in Turkey who would be working with marketing. But she started that because she was working in a corporation, and she especially found that in marketing and communicating B2B products was a challenge. And at that time, the book of Thomas Harris, which came out in 1990s in the United States, was the solution. And she shared this concept of marketing PR with advertisers, not PR people. And during the time she established her agency, which was in 1994, there was an economic crisis at that time in Turkey. And usually, new business, we expect that does not blossom. But on the contrary, the fact that in the economic crisis, people cut advertising expenditures, the discipline of MPR blossomed in this era. With respect to her experience, she summarizes public relations contribution to marketing as credibility based on third-party endorsements, can talk to all stakeholder groups, opinion leaders, sales groups, ambassadors. Especially in product launches, there is differential advantages. It is a solution to brand-created crisis, and also exists or helps the brand when there is no advertising. In a way, she sees public relations as a glue, not just in a limited way as media relations or publicity purposes. In terms of challenges and approaches, the issue that come is brand communication the task of public relations or advertising? This is true for Turkey. Usually, whoever its idea gets the share in that. The second important remark she made in the interview was the evaluation of public relations. Even when she was doing marketing public relations service to her clients, she claimed that there was a demand for media coverage analysis. On the other hand, in that respect, public relations did not show its function, its input, its evaluation to the service demanders. And she says the success is achieving business objectives and it is not free publicity. With respect to integrated communication, if one says this is a secure car, that perception of security, where does it come from, is not known. Is it from PR, is it from advertising, etc. In fact, the integration is not created by us, but it is created by the consumer. And the other importance is that we are all consumers. We don't want to come across messages, and integrated communication helps to avoid the cloudy perception and helps us through contacting our stakeholders at every contact point and helps us to be consistent. In terms of structure of communication function, definitely she says this is a top management level position, and in the executive committee, the vice president should be responsible for communication, but she asked the question, is this true for Turkey? In Turkey, not yet. We cannot say this. In terms of the discussion of the role of public relations person, one thing that we should consider is competencies of the PR person. So the new PR person should be managing communication strategies, should be consulting to the management, taking into consideration all stakeholder groups, should be capable of government relations, understanding crisis situations and managing, understanding financial communication, and according to her, should have the opportunity to have contact with opinion leaders. I'm not going to go over her campaigns, integrated campaigns that she has carried out, but I would like to maybe say some of them. The IGAS, for IGAS, they did a campaign where they tried to prevent the people from household accidents, and that idea was very successful. It had been welcomed so much by the consumers, and that idea has also been later on integrated into the advertising. When we have the time to finish the we have the time to wrap up the proceedings, I'm sure you will have the opportunity to read the cases. And my final slide for conclusion and discussion. What is the objective of carrying public relations, advertising, or sales promotion? Is it changed? This postmodern era necessitated us to look at the communication concept in a more broader view. It brought us, it empowered individuals, and it also brought along with itself challenges. A communicator of today has to have new competencies. Because of the active stakeholder groups, has to be alert for 24 hours. We are in this era actually content producers. We are a generalist and also a specialist at the same time. And this also this has to make us think about what type of communication education we're going to give to our future graduates of communication faculties. I want to say thank you very much for your patience, and I'm sorry if I exceeded my time.
I would like to have only one or two questions if you have. Okay.
It's not a question, but just an observation. You mentioned that public relations started in Turkey in 1994?
No, 1996.
1960,
excuse me.
In the 60. 90s. But, you know, maybe as a profession. That started. Oh, yeah, okay.
No, I think you said public relations in Turkey started in 1960s.
Okay, that's okay. That's a misunderstanding. And I think, you know, even 1960s, it was maybe not as a profession, but as a practice. There should be more. It should be, you know, a longer tradition. If you look in the Ottoman Empire, you will see a lot of practice, which
of course.
Can be, you know,
from
the historical point of view, I think that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, but let me put this in that way. Of course, we do have some scholars who have worked about public relations history, and one of the academics who produced work in this era is from Ankara University, Professor Metin Kazancı. He does have a paper on public relations in Ottoman Empire. But when I met, or the Turkish PR books concentrate on how, like the public relations that comes from United States, okay? The modern PR aspect in that respect triggered by state organizations. But I totally agree with you. I mean, Ottoman Empire is very rich of practices that we could call public relations.
For the final presentation, I would like to invite Burak Amirak for presenting his collaborative study. He's the star. He's the star of the conference. So he's going to present their collaborative study conducted with our research assistants Serçin Sun and Pınar Umul.
Dear professors, dear colleagues, dear friends, please accept my warmest welcome. We have prepared this presentation under the concept of developing an idea and the significance of the idea in the integrated communications. We'd like to use the case of Benetton Unhate campaign. First of all, as we all know, IMC definitions and research topics, they all say the same things. And when we ask when we ask the people and our students, our colleagues, they come up with the same definitions and topics. It's one sight, one sound, it's about synergy, it's about media integration. And as Professor Kitchen has told us, 60% of it is kind of tactical, but we think we need to have it as a strategic role, as Holm stated in his article. That said, we could say it seems like IMC does not seem to tap on the theme of the concept of idea. As we all know, as the Professor Marshall stated, medium is the message today. So we're talking about, most of the time when we're mentioning about IMC, we're talking about the medium, how many different types of the medium we have penetrated our message. And we have a saying, content is the king. It is mostly referred to Bill Gates, but it's also referred to Summer Redstone from Viacom. If the content is the king, we should look at it much deeper, but as Kletcher refers to, content in IMC may be differentiated between messages and incentives. As incentives are the short-term offers, I think we should concentrate on the definition of the messages, which are brand concepts, ideas, or association, and all other values or perceptions that marketers transmit to customers. Coming to the idea, I think it's time we could look at the Benetton Unhate campaign, which inspired us about the idea thing. But before that, as a conceptual, we used that case study to conceptualize our point of view, but we had run a semi-structured, in-depth interview with 6 brand managers and advertising pros to gain much more insights. And we looked at the relationship between the idea and integrated communications. First of all, the case of Benetton Unhate campaign was awarded in Cannes Lyon's Grand Prix in the press section, but it is also a postmodern campaign, we could call, because it is interpreted through metaphor, it has constructed truth, semiotics, and symbolic as opposed to actual and realities. Before going into unhate campaign, we should consider Benetton's way of doing communications. It's speculative, it's distractive, and with the Toscani, the photographer Toscani, Oliver Toscani, they placed their photos, their ads, I could call, on billboards first, and then the magazines, and then they did the PR of it, and they were present on their websites. So we could call this an integrated campaign. But the unhate campaign, I'll leave you with the film of it. This was released on the 16th of November in 2011, and it was one day after, it was on a guerrilla issue. You could see all around the world, I mean not all around the world, but around the world there were some live actions. They opened up their posters in the squares, and then it hit the social media. Even though they didn't plan that much PR, it was an interesting thing that Vatican pledged legal action. And I would like to take your attention to the time it was on the news, because it was released on the 17th of November, and at 3:05 in the afternoon, there was this news on CNN website. Benetton website gives you the clue that we could act upon the idea. It says that the first 3 bullets are familiar with the brands, but the last bullet, a word we created to put people in a state of mind, which they have created a new word as unhate, enables us to discuss if the idea can be something in relation with integrated communications. To wrap up about the campaign, they first aired the film on social media, and they had that guerrilla operation, and they put up their outdoors, and the consumer can now follow PR issues, and on their website, the website gives you opportunity to go onto the social media, to the Kiss Wall, and they have a social responsibility project which they can have a dove of peace. So, yeah, Arabian Spring was also celebrated. So we can see that the idea can take us to some other medium that we can really exploit. The issue here is it's not only one sound and one sight, nor usage of multiple media, and nor just creating synergy made the unhate campaign integrated. We may consider that the strong idea has empowered the campaign to become integrated. And we asked this to the marketing and advertising professionals to ask for some insights, and this is to develop a new research also. The campaigns they admired, I would like to take your attention that dirt is good, impossible is nothing, which are big ideas in this advertising sector, are mentioned effectively. And if we ask them, when we asked them what should the campaign must consider, they replied emphasized on it should be integrated, different, and reach to the touch points. And integrated communications is, as we all know, they reply with a perfect, unmistakable answer, one voice, one message. And if they were asked what integrated campaigns must have, first, they have a good idea to differentiate and also meet the needs of the brand. And when we ask them what the good idea must have, it should be sustainable and it should be a platform for integration. And we prompted if media or idea, if they were to select those two, just one inch further, which one they would do. They weren't that sure that if they could choose between them, but I think this line really explains what they mean, and this is a verbatim from them. Idea is an architect, is the architect, media is the engineer. So they really like to balance the things. As a conclusion, we may say that idea can be a catalyst for integration, and integrated communication can be empowered by the idea. This is the end of my words. I would really appreciate if you can elaborate on these issues and ask questions.
Yeah. Any question? Yes.
I was wondering, how do you analyze this campaign in terms of, the Benetton's major line started with Toscani in the 1980s when he changed the, United Colors of Benetton campaign to, with controversial images. Could you please give us the insight of it?
Well, what we didn't do was analyze it in cultural forms. We just looked at the significance of idea there. But the most important thing for us to analyze are they just using the mediums just to fulfill the checklist of integrated marketing communications, or are they trying to have an idea that will empower them to use any kind of medium or create their own medium maybe? Would that be an answer for your question?
My question will follow from hers. In 2002, I believe, we published a paper on unintended effects of advertising, collateral damage on Benetton case. And it was published on JMC with Crozier and myself. And your question of United Colors of Benetton 2 controversy got Toscani sacked.
Yes, in
and
2000.
Those years of controversy created by Toscani were the worst years in terms of bottom line of United Colors of Benetton. And my question, which will follow with that, is that idea, yes, architect, yes, but what happens if the engineers and also the master who is going to build those doesn't match together? Or sometimes we see great buildings, but the functionality is not there. So
definitely.
Integration of the architect and the engineers and the master, I believe, is needed.
Definitely, I agree, but I think that's a further research question.
Yeah,
and also, what we're trying to underline here is, we always talk about messages, but below the iceberg I think we should come to, as Dr. Podnar said, back to basics and try to dig out more on the idea and try to figure out messages that would fit to the medium. And that means that there should be a balance between the architect and the engineer, the message and the media. But I think it's valuable to research that some ideas do better perform. So why? And for integration, is that a valuable or an empowerment tool for integrated communication was our case. Yes, sir.
I wondered if you could tie the concept of idea into the idea of the elaboration likelihood model.
Yeah.
You know? Because I think what you're talking about is a central, powerful idea can succeed in imparting strong, relevant arguments to, presumably, people who are interested in that type of thing.
Yeah, thank you.
But the reality is that the vast majority of advertising ideas are not that interesting. You know?
Definitely.
And they're reflected in communication that is more focused upon message criteria rather than just the idea itself. And so what was going through my mind was connecting this to the elaboration likelihood model, but also connecting to some of the works of John Philip Jones, who tries to explain why so much of advertising is frankly uninteresting and banal and so forth. So putting all those things together, I think it should be interesting to proceed down the track. No?
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're almost at the end of the conference, and finally, thank you for your patience. And before closing the day, closing the conference, I would like to thank all contributors for their valuable inputs, for their insightful information that they share with us. While we are planning this conference, we were aiming to scrutinize major concerns of integrated marketing communication, or let's say integrated communication from these different aspects. I guess we are all in line with our aim, because we have many presentations coming from different perspectives, from public relations, from customer care, from advertising, even from cultural perspective. So they were really, we really benefit from all these insightful sharings. Thank you for your interest, thank you for your coming, and thank you for the all audience being with us. As Professor Görpe mentioned, on Friday in the afternoon, with these shiny weather conditions. Thank you. Okay, so one more thing. I would like to have a picture for the memory of this day and to share our certificate of appreciation with the contributors. So I'd like to invite all contributors here, please.
I would like to thank you for organizing and inviting us all here. I think it's a great event. Thank you.